Welcome, everybody, to another episode of 6 Degrees of Associations. We're so excited to invite Sheri Jacobs, who comes to us by way of Stuart Meyer, if you guys remember talking to him about storytelling. Sheri, welcome to the show. I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about Avenue M Group before we get into the discussion of today.
Thanks, Erin. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you to Stuart for recommending me. So Avenue M Group is a organization that I started a little over a decade ago, and our purpose is to help organizations think differently and addressing the challenges that they face, really simply. And how we go about doing that is typically through doing some research. So oftentimes we're exploring, interviewing or surveying or looking at the environment with members and non-members. Sometimes it's through strategy and planning, and oftentimes it includes helping them build new business models, think about new product development, and ultimately achieving their goals, which sometimes is membership growth, but sometimes it's just reach and
Sure.
rethinking their organization.
That's awesome. And of course, I forgot to say hello to my co-host that's here every single week, Lucas. Hi. the man, the myth,
Great,
the legend.
Looking forward to this conversation. Tons of questions, but I kind of wanted to start out, Sheri, asking you at a macro level, when you stand back, how have those types of conversations with associations changed over the past maybe 10 years? Like,
Yeah.
what was the thing and what's now the thing, and where are we headed?
Sure. Thanks, Lucas. So it's interesting because Avenue M, in terms of the requests of the type of projects we get, has certainly followed the trends in terms of what is of top importance to these organizations, where they're going to invest and where they see that change has to come. So it started just with simple member research 10 years ago. You know what? We need to stay, on the pulse of what's going on with our members and kind of find out, are they satisfied with what they're doing? So pretty straightforward. And then very soon after I started the company, so in the early 2010s or 2011s, we started seeing a request for more business modeling, pricing, as organizations were thinking, I think that we need to change the way we do things. So I equate it to thinking about when some of us were kids and you received, you heard a song on a friend's album, but the only way to get it was to go buy the entire album because it was, side B, song 6, and they didn't release it as a single. So you saved all your money and you bought the album and you didn't like any other song, but you loved that one song.
Yeah.
And then iTunes came out and you're like, yay, I could spend 99 cents or $1.29 and just buy the one song I want. And then Spotify came out, and guess what? You don't have to buy it anymore. You can just get it when you need it, and you can curate your own list. But there are still some people that love the LP, they love the vinyl, and they listen to the album. They still exist out there and want all the benefits. Associations are still selling the album, even though their members just want side B, song 6. So they're seeing individuals drop off or companies drop off saying, maybe I should just be a customer because it may not make sense for me. So as the world started changing into new business models, organizations knew that they needed to go there, but how do you make change come about when they have so much invested in that, 80% of the members are using 20% of the benefits, and they need all that revenue from the membership. So it's not an easy challenge to tackle. And we were brought in to do not just research, but also financial modeling. And so we started seeing that trend, that kind of went along the lines of the trends going on as we all experience as consumers.
Yeah, we do a ton of research and modeling and understanding, shocker, numbers tell a story, right? And so I'd be curious, beyond surveys, how do you use some of your research? And you don't have to give up all your trade secrets here necessarily, but how do you use that research to tell you or help tell an association a story that, hey, you don't need to sell the whole album. Maybe we just need to sell an advocacy membership or an events membership, or however that you decide ultimately to make the recommendation.
Sure. Well, there's a couple things. It's a combination of research and other data, right? So in the research, we might find what is the average number of benefits that members use, and how does that vary by different member groups? So, the members that are maybe long term or have been a member of the organization for a while versus those who are new and entering the profession, and how does that change? And do you offer 15 benefits, but the average is 2.4 that's used?
Okay.
Okay, so that's going to be a leading indicator that you may be kind of concerned, because do they get enough value? If they get enough value for that and the other stuff is just kind of icing on the cake, that's fine.
Yeah.
But if there's just not enough value there, you certainly are at risk. Then the second data you want to look at is the data from your own database. So where are you seeing the renewals and the trends around that kind of data? What people don't realize is that it's not going to be this hit over the head thing. It's, action happens on the edges and then it comes in. That's how all change happens in the world. If we think about the politics that we've just been through in the last 4 years, that didn't happen in the center of those political groups and it happened on the edges, and they brought it in. And so the same thing happens with membership organizations. So it's looking at the data through these different lenses, and through these different bands, and trying to understand where are we seeing some trends that potentially could work their way in and have a bigger impact on the organization.
Mm-hmm.
Really awesome. When we were talking earlier about your business, Sheri, this makes me think about the fact that you brought in a term that I certainly hadn't heard before, but it seems more relevant today than ever. And it might be something that you can tell us you didn't see 10 years ago, but you've started engaging in it now, which was social network analysis. So I'm curious, is this something that has been just creeping into the way in which you look at things over the last 10 years? Or is this something that has sort of been sped up in the last 2 years that you just all of a sudden were like, light bulb, let me think about that?
Great question, Erin. Well, it's interesting because while the concept of social network analysis has been around for decades, and we've experienced it, every single person knows that when you walk into a room, you walk into a party, you see somebody that has something in common with you. It could be that they went to the similar school. It could be that something about a conversation, they talk about a hobby or an interest, right? So we tend to go to people that have similar interests and likes, and then we stick with them, and that becomes our network. And so that has happened for decades. But there's been an increased awareness. I was talking about the trend, right? There was membership, there was pricing and business modeling. Now everybody's talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and going beyond the D, right? We've all been focused on the D. Do we have the demographics, and do we have diversity within our ranks? But it's equity and inclusion that matters the most when you are thinking about how we can be successful in this area. And social network analysis is a process for you to better understand the pathways that people connect and get involved and have equitable opportunities to advance in their career and within the organization. And so you have both sides. You have one group of people saying, we're trying to get more diverse people to volunteer, and diverse can be age, it can be gender, it could be race, ethnicity, it could be disability, it can be veteran status, right? We're trying to get more people to get involved, but we can't get them involved. The problem is that their networks are filled with people that are very much like them, went to the same school, or had a similar pathway. So social network analysis actually provides the data and the visualization of where your social networks are, so that you can understand, okay, well, this is why we are not succeeding at either attracting them, engaging them, or retaining people, the diverse audiences that we want. So that is an area that Avenue M Group is really interested in doing, because you can look at associations and they've been successful at recruiting possibly a more diverse membership. They find less success in retaining and engaging and providing equitable opportunities for people to succeed. But the really most important thing is that I've learned more recently is that not everybody is either on board with this, or believes that this is a challenge, or is ready to move forward with change. And so the best way to start bringing this conversation is to say, well, we all have a common purpose. And our common goal here is that everyone in our profession should have an opportunity to succeed, right? We all agree to that. Everybody's like, okay, so now let's go back and look at, are there barriers or challenges that might be preventing people? Because all we are looking at doing is trying to close those gaps, trying to create equitable opportunities for people so that everyone has an opportunity to succeed. So it's finding that common goal, using research to help bring the data there, having empathy for both sides, trying to create equitable opportunities. And then at the end, there's the deliverable. Okay, this is what we're going to do about it. So it's actually called CREED, CREED. And I did not come up with that.
Okay.
But
I think in the Rocky movie, but
yeah, there's a lot of, so CREED is from Professor Alvin, I think Tillery, and from Northwestern, but it is, we use that CREED model with our social network analysis and our diversity climate studies. So that's where we're spending a lot of the time right now.
You know, it made me think of a conversation we were having with JT with the Colorado Association of Society Executives, Society of Association Executives, excuse me there. And she was talking a little bit about just some sunsetting some, programs and, being careful about not letting them come in because of a few, I don't think she used this term, but I'll use this term, maybe squeaky wheels. And so this whole conversation you're having with me here is, or with us, is making me think about that a lot of associations may have some very prominent members or some very active members that may be the squeaky wheels. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, but they may be the loudest voices in the room. And it sounds like the social network analysis, and I think a word you had mentioned on our off-camera discussion was influence, is like that this would be able to allow associations to see where beyond who they believe the participatory or active members are that actually carry influence in different networks. Is that something else that you're able to help like associations identify and then go after the influential people, if you will, in areas that maybe they're not targeting yet?
Exactly. And there's two ways to think about that. So there's who has the influence that's having an impact on decisions, on budget allocation, on where do we invest, what do we stop doing, who has those influence and potentially are either those roadblocks, or could we reach out to and say, hey, can you use your influence in a different way? What we forget to do is not just push against it, but to say, come on board with us. You have influence and power, use it in a way that brings in other people and show the dynamic of it. So it's identifying where those influences, where those bottlenecks might be happening, where the challenges might be occurring, and rethinking your strategy for saying, how can we include you in it? Like, how can you be a sponsor? How can you actually use your power and your influence to help others? And I think that's an important part. It's identifying it, but then coming up with solutions that are going to work through the entire community, not leaving anyone behind.
I also love the idea of using this as a retention opportunity, not just attracting new members, because everybody thinks, well, we have a diversity issue. We need to focus on getting these members that fill the gaps on where our diversity is. But yeah, that's the bait. But what is the hook that really gets them to stay around and thinking beyond just bringing a bunch of people on the bus? Like, let's shut the doors or keep these people here. That's just as impactful, if not more, than just filling the seats.
Yeah, I agree, Lucas. I think that it is similar to having a recruitment strategy, but having no onboarding, engaging, or retention strategy, and seeing that the holes in your bucket and the water flowing out through it and you're losing member and you're having a high turn rate. It's similar with diversity. I remember recruiting a Black friend to a board role. And he said, you know what, I'm not filling a demographic. Like, unless I can have a voice and have some influence, I'm not interested in just fulfilling that demographic checkbox. And I said, you know what, I think you can. I think you can have an impact, but that is fair. And, thinking back to my role on the board serving with this individual, my goal is to make sure that their voices are heard and that we are listening to them and they're not just filling a demographic. So I think, that's retention, right? We're going to recruit them. Maybe we can recruit them in, but if they don't have a voice at the table, then they really, they're not running the table. Again, it's the same problems still exist.
Right.
Absolutely. Well, we know that we could pick your brain for a ton more, but as we always like to say, we like to leave a little bit on the table so people get to know you better and go seeking you out, which we'll provide links, of course, and shout outs so that people know where to find you, Sheri. But we always end these episodes with a request of who do you have in your network little bit of social networking we're doing here that you feel our audience would benefit from hearing from, that you would suggest?
Yeah, one of the people that I admire the most, who I think is smart and is talented and has a tremendous amount of experience in our association community, is Deborah Zabadil. And Deborah is the CEO of the Learning Studio. We worked together years ago in an association. She can do what I can. She can say what I can say, which is I've sat in every seat that everyone in the room has sat in. So I've been on the staff, been in a senior role, been a consultant, served in volunteer positions, and she works in the space of professional development. So I highly recommend connecting with Deborah Zabadil.
That's great. I love when there are people that came from associations that moved to agencies or organizations that serve the industry because they've been there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's awesome. Oh, and we haven't had someone on about professional development, so I think that's just really awesome. And how that must be changing right now in the pivot. Just the whole learning management systems and how do you actually reach people remotely to help them professionally develop. And it's got to be a whole new skill set that people have to develop as well. So great suggestion. Thank you for being here today, Sheri. We really appreciate you sharing some of your insights there. And Lucas, of course, it's great to see you again as well.
Thank you, Erin. And Sheri, this was such a pleasure. I love talking to you. This conversation could go on and on, but I'd love for you to just continue to have that with associations because you're bringing a ton of value to the industry.
Well, thank you so much, Erin and Lucas. It's truly been my pleasure. And thank you for inviting me to participate.
Absolutely. All right, everyone, signing off. We'll see you in 2 weeks for 6 Degrees of Associations next. Thank you.